Hi friends, I'm Jeff E.G. I recently bought the Izotope Music Production 6 suite, and I'm pretty excited about it. You see, I was already using Ozone 11, and I already had Nectar 3. So I was looking at upgrading both Nectar to Nectar 4 and Izotope 11 to the advanced version. As it turns out, Izotope offers a cross-grade to the entire suite, and the suite is actually less expensive than those two individual upgrades. Now, before I bought it, I scoured the internet and YouTube for any objective, honest evaluation of everything that's included in the Music Production Suite 6. Surprisingly, I had great difficulty finding a comprehensive list. Everybody covers the flagship products like Neutron or RX, but all of the other bits that are included in that suite are hardly ever mentioned. So if you're like me, you like to know what you're getting. I'm going to do 3 things in this video. First, I'm going to go through everything that's included in the Music Production Suite. Number 2, I'm going to highlight the applications that get most of the attention. But most importantly, number 3, I'm going to tackle the issue of, is this the future of mixing and mastering? Let's dig into it. After I bought the Music Production Suite, I noticed on the website they had a list of everything that was included, and quite frankly, I didn't even know what some of these things were. Some of the products were from Brainworx, some of them were from Exponential Audio, which was, I guess, acquired by Izotope in the past. And there were some tools in there that I wanted to try, like Neoverb and Vocal Synth. There's more than 20 bits and pieces and applications that make up the bundle, but beware when you install it, it doesn't all get installed from the Izotope portal. You do have to go to Plugin Alliance to get the Brainworx components, and you may have to go to the old Exponential Audio website in order to download things like Stratus 3D.
I'm in Logic, and when I go to add an Izotope, look at Izotope. Look at this long list of stuff. Pretty confusing. Each one of these things is called a module within a module family. So take Neutron 4, for example. It includes 7 modules, compressor, EQ, all of these things that are listed here. Let's say you just wanted to open up the Ozone 11 EQ. You could. And it's a standard EQ, somewhat better than probably what you have. It has presets. You can choose the presets, or you can modify the EQ just like you would any other. Some great features in it, so learning how to use it's good. On this piano track, I'm going to open up Neutron, because Neutron is a good example of how these Izotope plugins work. And one of the main features of all the Izotope plugins is that it uses what they call AI, but I call this just best practices. And it has an assistant that listens. So I click on the assistant and it asks me to play the audio. So I do. And it correctly identifies this sound as piano and has some tonal profiling that relates to a piano. This is the assistant view, and you can control a lot of things just from the assistant view. First of all, there's a thing called tonal intent. How much intent do you want Neutron to apply? Over here, you have punch, which is actually compression. You've got distortion, which is actually a subset of the trash plugin, and then width, which is the stereo width. As you play back the sound, I'll turn it off and on so you can hear the impact. Without with high-level tone matching type capabilities. Now, the second page is the detailed page, and this shows you the modules that are actually in play. So Neutron's listened to your audio and determined it's going to use sculpture, which you can control here. You can see it's determined that's a piano, an equalizer. And you can see it's dropping off some of the low frequencies, a compressor, a second compressor, and an exciter. So it's determined that these things are the best modules to be applied. And as I mentioned, there are 7. So you could use a gate, transient shaper, and this unmask facility, which we'll demonstrate in a second here. Now on some tracks, letting Neutron listen and determine the best scenario isn't necessarily the best approach. So here I've got a drum track, and I'm going to play the audio. And it has rightfully determined that these are drums, and this is the tonal shape that it's trying to fit that drum loop into. What modules did it use? Again, sculptor, EQ, 2 compressors, and it's using some settings on the exciter. Those settings and your ability to tweak them don't satisfy you. There are many presets. So you can go, say, the drums, drum bus, and you've got some presets that you can use. There's without. Another really cool feature in Neutron is using a stem or a sample as your frequency target. Get your track or song closer to that reference sound. I'm going to use a piano just to give you a demo. There's Neutron. I'm going to do the analysis. And the results of this analysis show this orange area, which is kind of the target frequency range for piano, and the white line on it when it's playing shows you how our sounds falls into that range. Now you can add a custom option here as well by clicking on Custom. I have a sample called 70s Ballad Piano. It sounds like this. Different notes, but you get the idea. And you can see the orange area has changed to try and map my sample to the tonal range of that 70s ballad. Pretty cool. We can go back to the standard piano range. And we can compare 70s. You can use that for any instrument. If there's a bass, drums, guitar part, and you want to mimic the sample from its tonal properties, you can import that tonal profile. A cool feature of Neutron is called unmasking. Now, unmasking is to deal with two or more tracks where they're stepping on each other's toes. There is a desire in mixing to have clarity and all the individual parts well isolated. I've got drums and a bass part. Here's what it sounds like. I choose one of the parts, in this case the bass, that I don't want to step on the toes of the drum. And I'm going to add Neutron. And then I'm going to add the unmasking feature. So I turn on unmasking, and I'm going to sidechain that with the drums. So I choose the drums as my sidechain in Logic. I can control and visually see wherever the frequencies of the drums, particularly the kick drum and the bass, step on each other's toes. It's this orange part that you're seeing down at the bottom. And as I increase the sensitivity of that unmasking, you can see that you don't hear as much of the bass. Let's try it the other way around. In the drums, I'm going to use the unmasking feature. I'm going to add it, unmask, and I'm going to sidechain that to the bass. In this case, you can hear it's lowering the kick drum so that more of the bass can cut through. Nectar for Advance works a lot like Neutron, except it's designed specifically for vocals. I mean, turn on the assistant and we play our vocal track.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out.
Assistant settings are a little bit different here. You've got control over some parameters like shape, intensity, whether it's balanced or not balanced, right or left, whether it's dark or light, tools for managing the spectral space. If we look at the details on the Detail tab, we can see that it added a gate, an EQ, a de-esser, a compressor. You're going to often see this 2 EQ scenario. Essentially, the first EQ, you can see it has dips to eliminate offending frequencies or boxy type sounds that you don't want in your vocals, whereas the second EQ is designed to enhance the tonal quality of the vocal. Then you've got something called voices, if you are doing vocal transformation or replacement.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out.
Just turn it off.
Got my head spinning. No kidding, I can't pin
Turn it back
you
on.
down.
And speaking of auto leveling, there are some great new features in the advanced version here. Auto leveling is really very much like the Waves fader writer. It essentially lowers the high volume vocals and increases the low volume ones like a compressor would do, as if you were riding the fader up and down dynamically. Another cool feature in that auto leveler is this tame denoise feature. There's cracks and pops and breathing. If you don't want those sounds included in your vocal, turn on this tame noises feature and actually identify what those noises are. If you click on this little ear icon, you'll actually hear them. Just switching to another vocal track, turning it on.
My bad habit is coming back to you. My bad habit is coming back to you.
Come on, baby, feel the vibe. Let me take you on a ride.
My bad habit is coming back to you.
If you turn on the backer feature, you can substitute the voice.
My bad habit is coming back to you.
Come on, baby, feel the vibe. Let me take you on a ride.
My bad habit is coming back to you.
My bad habit is coming back to you. My bad habit is coming back to you.
So that would be substituting the recorded voice for one of these other voices, and you can create custom voices. The voices feature is designed for backups.
My bad habit is coming back to you.
So that's a lower harmony. Put on solo, you hear just the harmony.
My bad habit is coming back to you.
And there are presets.
My bad habit is coming back to you. My bad habit is coming back to you. My bad habit is coming back to you.
So you've got this great tool for creating harmony vocals. You can feed those harmony vocals to another channel so that you can control the level of it if you don't want to control it right within Nectar 4. Well, using Ozone 11 Advanced for mastering is a little bit like Neutron or Nectar in terms of its abilities. So when we want to use it, we put it on the mixer on the master output. It's going to go right here. Ozone 11. And much like some of the other tools, we're going to use the assistant initially.
Well, I've been on down to the ocean, and I've seen.
Interestingly, it's determined that this song most closely represents the tonal balance of a reggae song, but you can change it to any of these presets and listen to the song again, but this is what it initially came up with. So in that assistant view, you've got some things that you can control here that are pretty new. One is the vocal balance, which is really quite good. If you want to punch up the vocals, this is something you can change. If we look at the details, you'll see that it's added an equalizer with a pretty complex curve here of taking out certain frequencies and enhancing others. It's using this impact module, an imager, the clarity module, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail, a stabilizer, more dynamic EQ, but you can see in these dynamic settings, it's determined a couple frequencies that are problematic, and then the maximizer. We can see what some of these things are doing.
Well, I've been on down to the ocean.
Now, the goal of the maximizer is to get the maximum volume units without increasing any clipping or distortion. And it has a bunch of new features that are pretty cool. One of them is this upward compression. Normally, when you add compression, you lop off kind of the loud bits in the song to bring them down to a level of certain dBs that are going to be manageable within the overall mix. The upward compression does the opposite. It takes the bottom end and lops that off, increasing the line of the bottom. Another feature is clarity. Now, clarity dial here, and this is a balance between white noise and pink noise, which is in the middle, and brown noise to the right.
Well, I've been on down to the ocean, and But as to where I ever got
That's
the
with it turned off.
notion that I've been
And there's with all of
the
the
places I've dreamed.
Other than these presets here, which are great, you can create a custom tonal definition that you might want this song to fit into. So for example, capture the tonal profile of, say, a pop song that you like. So I found one and I called it Hot and Sweaty, and it defines a particular curve. And if I apply that curve to my song, I expect to get a similar master to that pop song that I've used as my model. And it's going to essentially make adjustments. It's going to use all the tools and modules available in Ozone 11 Advanced to push my song into that profile. Now, I won't get into all of the details about these different modules because that would take a whole video. All of these details, all of these capabilities built into Ozone 11 Advanced, probably the best mastering tool available. RX is really the audio fixing engine with a lot of capabilities, and there's two ways you can use it. One, you can launch it just as a standalone application from within your applications folder. And it's going to look like this. It's going to bring up this spectrograph, and you can switch between the spectrograph view and just the waveform view. But I think you're going to find that the spectrograph, which highlights loud parts as yellow and quiet parts as blue, as well as the frequency range of all of these parts, is going to be the most useful. Now, there is a theory that says you might pull up, say, a vocal track, pull it into the editor and make changes to it before you start using it in your DAW. Using RX in your DAW is another option. I'm going to lead you through some examples of how you would do that.
I can picture the way you fit in, like a piece of a puzzle that was missing.
And off to the right here are all of the tools you have available for fixing the audio. So let's say there's a low hum. You can choose the de-hum tool. It will analyze track, determine if there is hum to be removed. You can adjust the sensitivity, the bands that are applied. For example, here, it's looking for hum below 128 hertz. But if you think the hum is higher than that, you could increase this up, and it will render those changes. And in doing so, back at the spectrogram, the bottom layer that was previously loud is made softer by removing any low frequency hum. Here's another one in here. And this is where the vocalist is taking a breath. If you want to de-emphasize those, you can essentially reduce the gain for those breathing parts. Preview it and give it a listen. Click on render, it'll process the file, and it'll get rid of the breathing noise. So,
Oh, you adore me. Oh, you adore me.
there are so many fixes for typical audio problems. You can de-reverb by removing reverb. You can reduce hum, de-ess. There's often crackle from, say, lip smacks and swallowing. All of these type of typical repairs. Now, back in your DAW, let's say you have a vocal here. Let's just give this a listen.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out.
We can open RX and use one of the specific tools, clip, crackle. Let's say we hear crackle and we want to get rid of the crackle on this track. We can open this up, make some adjustments, and apply it. Now, an interesting thing here is if you click on this output crackle only, what you'll hear is what's being eliminated. Have to listen pretty closely, but there are some crackles and pops that are being eliminated. And that's just the beginning. We could add other audio fixes. Let's try the DS capabilities. Classic or spectral, you can adjust the threshold, cut off frequencies. Again, let's just hear what this would cut out if we turn on the output only capability. So you could hear there are some wisps and sounds that we don't want in our vocals. So by turning this on, we get rid of them.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out.
Now just jumping back to the standalone editor, there is a repair assistant that would go through the entire vocal track or instrument track that you're trying to address, and it will apply a variety of tools within this realm. So you don't even have to make the choice. This is ideal for someone who isn't sure what needs to be cleaned up. It'll process everything in that vocal track, and it'll make adjustments using just that repair assistant tool, and then you can control the level of that tool. It has some presets for voice, for keys or a melodic instrument, for drums, and for sound effects. So we'll leave it on vocal since this is a vocal track. As you make changes to a file, it's actually keeping track of everything down in this history. We've got dehum, breath control, and the repair assistant. So if I want to go back to the initial state, and it'll bring back the audio to the original settings.
Neutron, Nectar, Ozone 11, and RX, those are the flagship tools for mixing, mastering, and audio fixes. Those are the Izotope apps that offer the assistant capabilities or the one-button solution. They take advantage of AI modeling. They all share a certain UI, but there's so much more in this bundle. There's Guitar Rig Pro 7 and Vocal Synth. And then let's take a quick look at some of the reverbs, starting with Neoverb, Stratus 3D, and Symphony 3D. And we'll include looking at relay and the tonal balance capabilities. Then beyond those core Izotope apps, we'll take a quick look at everything you get from Brainworx and how you can make use of those plugins. And lastly, we'll take a look at the effects that come from Native Instruments. Those effects bundles you might already have if you own Complete 14, but I'm still going to show them in this video and at least let you know that they are there.
The Music Production Suite comes with Guitar Rig 7 Pro, and this version is a big improvement over the previous. It includes some new amps, some new cabinets, a looper, and some additional effects. But the way we think of Guitar Rig is also evolving a little bit. It's a great amp simulator, competes with a lot of other products, but it can also be used with any type of instrument as just an effects rack. It's a great collection of your typical effects. Here's the raw guitar. Here it is with Guitar Rig. You can search through the presets or create your own rack. Now let's just listen to that on a non-guitar instrument. So this is a great way to do sound design. It's a great addition to have. I myself have to get used to the idea of using this as an effects rack as opposed to just a guitar simulator. Vocal Synth has been around for a while, and initially it got great reviews because it was so much more than your traditional vocoder. But it is very much a vocal effect that combines synthesis and your source sounds.
One day, baby, we'll be old. Oh, baby, we'll be old and think of all the stories that we could have told.
And let me turn on Vocal Synth with this preset.
One day, baby, we'll be old. Oh, baby, we'll be old and think of all the stories that we could have told.
BioVox, which has a bunch of settings, and you can control the synthesis, the waves that are applied. There's lots of options, and it has this kind of area where you can pick the vowel sound you want BioVox to use. Then you've got the traditional vocoder. You've got CompuVox, again with a bunch of parameters, slightly different sound. You've got TalkBox, and you've got Polyplex. All of these combined can be layered, or you can just choose presets. And from the presets menu, you'll find that they're organized into two groups. Auto mode presets, which are designed to work with your audio, and MIDI mode presets. And this is when you set up a separate track where MIDI notes are going to be played, and they're going to dictate the tonality or the pitch that you hear.
One day, baby, we'll be old. Oh, baby, we'll be old and think of all the stories that we could have told.
You could do some really amazing and creative things with vocal synth. Neoverb is the latest reverb unit available from Izotope or Native Instruments. What they've done is combined algorithms for algorithmic reverb from a number of sources, including their acquisition of exponential audio. And this reverb engine is actually three: top, left, and right. And this little ball in the middle lets you decide how much of each sound and type you want to include. Off to the right, you've got the blue part, reflection. Pink part is a plate reverb, and the orange part is a hall reverb. And the degree of each are things that you can control. Pre-EQ and reverb EQ on the outside. That's with no reverb. I'll just turn on the reverb. There's a lot of capabilities here, tons of presets, but one of the ones that's particularly helpful is this unmask capability. And we've discussed how you can use unmasking to stop frequencies from one track from stepping on the toes of another. We did that in Neutron, and that's built into Neoverb as well. Let's just take a look at some of the presets. So each one of those three reverb engines has details that you can manipulate manually: the time, the size, fusion. You can see how they're laid out here. The idea of having three reverb engines all interacting with one another and layered gives you a lot of flexibility beyond your typical reverb. Compared to the dozens of reverbs I already have, I would rate Neoverb as maybe the most modern and sophisticated of the bunch. I did do another video on reverbs recently, and there's a link to it up above if you want to understand how Neoverb works in a bit more detail. Izotope Tonal Balance is like an overall mastering tool that you would put on the, so bring up a mixer here. See, I've inserted it on the stereo out, and it divides up the frequencies of your song between these different groups, right? You got the low frequencies, mids, mid-highs, and the highs. So when you play, it'll show you where you fit in that tonal balance setting. And you can adjust these balances, or you can use presets. So for example, here, if I wanted to say hip hop, it's going to apply the tonal balance that would normally be found in hip hop. Down the bottom here, you can select your source. So within this one tool on your master track, you can link this to Neutron, Nectar, and all of these other tools that are within the Izotope suite. You don't have to install this on each and every track. You can just put it on the master. Relay is another tool like the tonal balance that is a low CPU overhead utility. It lets you adjust your track's gain, pan, and stereo image all from one place. You don't have to go into each individual track because it's integrated into these, what they call IPC-enabled Izotope plugins.
Hey, let's just take a quick look at what comes in the bundle from Brainworx and from Native Instruments.
I've got a vocal track here. Just want to listen to it.
Isn't it time that she woke up? Made a new plan before it's too late.
The first one we'll listen to is the Brainworx Delay 2500, and it's a complex delay.
Isn't it time that she woke up? Made a new plan before it's too late.
It has all kinds of presets.
Isn't it time that she woke up? Made a new plan before it's too late.
It has a lot of features for controlling the time of the delay, the feedback, panning, obviously, filters, auto wah. There's left to right, synchronizing with your DAW, tempo, stereo width, ducking, modulation, distortion. It's a good delay. Another tool they deliver is the Brainworx Refinement tool. And this tool is designed to remove the harshness in a mix or mastering. It eliminates those unpleasant high frequencies and adds some warmth by using saturation. And you can use this to refine your sound, processing mid and side stereo width. A good example is you might use this on drums like a snare that's just a little bit too abrasive. And I'll let you hear what it sounds like on these vocals.
Isn't it time that she woke up?
It's off and now it's on.
Made a new plan before it's too late. Isn't it time that she spoke up? 'Cause she gives more than she takes.
So it's subtle on vocals, but there are lots of applications where using one of these presets does a really good job of just eliminating those harsh frequencies. You also get the Brainworx Clean Sweep Pro, which is kind of a combination of an EQ tool and a filter.
Isn't it time that she woke up? Made a new plan before it's too late. Isn't it time that she spoke up?
And I'm using modifications here that are significant so that you can hear what this thing actually does in terms of its EQ settings. See, Alarm Clock has a very narrow band.
Isn't it time that she woke up? Made a new plan before it's too late.
You can see me playing around with the joystick control. It's got cutoff frequency, type, order, ripple, lots of features and lots of good presets. Another plugin from Brainworx is the BX Subsynth. And this can be particularly useful for sculpting a bass sound. So here's a bass sound and I'll turn it on partway through. Now I'll turn it on. So in this case, I'm using the bass drum sub punch with some edge. And some of these changes are subtle. Here's a more severe one called Explosion A. So there's a lot of flexibility with this plugin as well, not just the presets, but you can control things like edge, which you could hear is adding sort of a harsh distortion to the sound. They also give you the Brainworx Saturator version 2. And if you've played with other saturation tools, you'll find this one is very powerful, quite complex, and they've divided up the application of that saturation across mid-high, mid-side high, mid-low, side low. And you've got some sliders in the middle that control the level quite nicely. It's a subtle change, but you'll notice it. Another great plugin. You also get a bunch of Native Instruments plugins, individual plugins. And on the surface, it looks like you have 8. But there's 2 things on there, Mod Pack and Crush Pack, which are made up of more plugins. So you actually get 14. Okay, the first one is a well-known reverb called ROM. Turn it off. So ROM's great. It has a lot of presets and it's very popular. There's just all kinds of different reverbs to choose from and it's highly customizable. You also get a delay, and the delay is called Replica XT, and it's a great delay. It's got lots of capabilities too. I'll turn it on partway through. So between ROM and Replica XT, if you don't already have a variety of reverb and delay, these are 2 that you can use. Another 2 that you get are Driver and Supercharge GT. Driver is like a distortion plugin, but it does a lot more than just overdrive. Supercharger is like a saturation tool combined with some modulation effects where you can change the character of that saturation. That's Driver. That's Supercharge. Now, I've picked a preset in there that maybe isn't as exaggerated with a piano sound, but I think you get the idea. You also get something called the Solid Mix series, which is made up of 3 things. I'm not going to demo these, but there's a bus compressor, dynamics, a compressor capability where you can add some dynamics and use it as an expander, and then there's an EQ. You also get a transient master, which kind of looks like part of the Solid series, but it's actually a separate plugin with its own presets. So you can use that as a drum crusher. As you can see here, you can add punch. The final 3, which are grouped as the Crush Pack, 3 standard effects: bite, dirt, and freak. And these are all modifiers that you might use on more likely guitar sounds than piano sounds. In fact, if you look in Guitar Rig Pro 7, you'll find that these are included in that rack as well. I'll just let you hear what they sound like. There's bite. There's dirt. And there's freak. So 2 thoughts on all these plugins. 1, most of the capabilities of these individual plugins are already built into things like Neutron and Nectar. So why you need the individual plugins is a little bit of a question. They are different, they do have different character, but really this is driving you back to the notion of sound design for a particular track rather than using one of the AI best practice tools. In my case, I already had all of these because I own Native Instruments Complete 14. And all of these are included.
Now, one big area of debate is this the future for mixing, mastering, and audio production? One of the reasons I bought this bundle was to get familiar with everything Izotope has to offer. In my mind, I was thinking, why don't I give this a try? Why don't I do all my mixing and mastering with just the Izotope solution? The traditional methods most of us have used is a variety of individual plugins and effects to build things like our own vocal chain. In my case, I'm using a combination of UAD plugins. Because I'm using an Apollo on the way in, I use console with channel strips, EQ, and compression. And then once I have my recordings in Logic, I'm using a lot of Logic plugins plus third-party plugins. But I'm picking and choosing as the producer which plugins are going to serve my purpose. And some of them are on the creative side. I use those plugins sometimes to do sound design or come up with a unique way of delivering vocals, acoustic sounds, or electronic sounds. That flexibility of using any vendor product is somewhat freeing because there are no limitations. Now, if I commit to using the Izotope products, I'm really committing to their EQ, their compressors, their gates, all of the modules that we've discussed earlier in the video. And in my initial analysis, I find that all of their stuff is really good quality. It's as good as Valhalla. It's as good as FabFilter. It's as good as the plugins that are in Logic. But it has the added advantage of being integrated into those flagship products. So the pace of doing the work should be faster. I should be able to get good results with less effort. On the other hand, and so the debate continues, when I did use those third-party plugins, I was able to save them all as settings. Whether I was doing that in the UA console or doing it within Logic, I didn't have to recreate my vocal chain every time. And if I had a certain combination of plugins that I use for piano or for drums, I could reuse that sequence over and over again, much the same way you might use Neutron or Nectar from Izotope. Am I doing the type of analysis that the Izotope apps do every time you use the assistant? Not really. I've made those decisions ahead of time, and I'm using a combination of plugins that I think reflects my creativity as a producer. So part of this debate is, do I have the same latitude when I use the Izotope apps? Or am I being kind of locked into a workflow and a process that's been defined for me by Izotope? I think the audience really matters here. If you're a novice and you don't have a lot of experience mixing, these Izotope apps can get you a long way. It's faster, it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and if you look at the results, there's things you can learn. You can look at the EQ and see what changes are being suggested. When is it the right time to apply a limiter? When is it the right time to insert an exciter? Izotope is making those suggestions for you. So as a novice, there's less to learn. Well, you should be able to get results quicker, I would say. Now, as to the future, that really is a big question, because are more and more people going to use these model or AI-driven apps, like the ones from Izotope, to get the job done faster? I'm already in one area using those apps where maybe I would have used another service, and that is in the mastering area. I can do my mastering with Ozone 11, and I can do it myself, so I tend to use that more often. I work on a song, I get it to a certain level of completion, and I'll do the mastering myself just to see what it would sound like. Previously, I would have sent my stems to a mix engineer or a mastering service. For that fee, I would have got a new set of ears, somebody else listening to my song, somebody else adding their creative input. Well, if you do the mastering yourself, you don't really get that second level of input. That's one of the things you're giving up. Some of the tools like RX that are great for fixing audio are capabilities that would have taken me hours to perform manually or with other plugins. So there's a big win there if you can do it yourself. Wisely, I think Izotope is marketing these tools to musicians and producers like me. You have to have an audience that's willing to pay for these apps and can see the value in using them. So I think the future is tough to predict. Izotope seems to be a leader. It was acquired by Native Instruments, and there are some other players that will compete with Izotope over time. Will they have a comprehensive suite like the Music Production Bundle 6? That's hard to say. Even Izotope has accumulated that bundle by putting together a lot of different products from different vendors. It didn't happen overnight. What's your opinion? Do you think these things are the future? Now, I'm not sponsored by Native Instruments or Izotope, but I think this is an important topic, and if you have opinions on it, you should share them in the comments. If you found this video useful, click on the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel so I can do more things like this. Thanks for watching.